I am a regular person. I'm not a size 2. Curves are cool and hot. I'm not a rapper, athlete, or socialite. Just me. I wasn't born in Beverly Hills. I have fat feet. They're cute though. And I have my own opinion. I am a regular person. I am Just Chamia. Hey folks, we are back with another episode of the Just Chamia Show. I am here with Kevin Bremond and Gary Thompson, founders of the Alameda County Fathers Corp. So we're going to talk more about the Fathers Corp, but before we do, Gary and Kevin, and feel free, whichever one of you to start, what are you reading and what are you listening to?
Go ahead.
I'll start. Right now I'm reading Ta-Nehisi Coates' book. I can't remember the title of it, the recent book he released. I got it for Christmas and I've been reading chapter by chapter. Plus, what is his name? I can't remember the name of the book, what he wrote. But I'm also reading the second publication of Black Panther that he wrote too. So I'm reading those together. And I'm listening to Childish Gambino.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
That is interesting for me because I'm not really into hip hop, but I like his messaging and I really like the video he released with one of his songs.
This Is America.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting.
Okay.
And I also listened to the recent Jay-Z and Beyonce video because I like they shot it at the Louvre.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I haven't even checked that out yet.
It's fabulous.
But okay.
I like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
What you reading, what you listening to, Kevin?
I should know the name of the book, but I can't. It's actually off of Ta-Nehisi's book list.
Okay.
And it's David Carr, which is a mentor. He was a mentor of his, and he wrote a book about his addiction. And he went back and interviewed folks who he ran with when he was an addict of alcohol and crack cocaine. I want to say heroin as well. He was out there. So he basically is just going through and interviewing folks, trying to recall how his life went, and I'm about halfway through. Very interesting book, though.
All right, cool.
And what am I listening to? I'm listening to Kevin Gates right now, which is...
All right, you Kevin Gates, Childish Gambino, Beyonce, and Jay. All right, the hip hop is represented. All right, so as I said, we're going to talk about the Fathers Corp. But before we do, I'd love to get your opinion on a few select news stories and talk about what's going on in our world. Okay. In March, U.S. infrastructure was given a D+ grade in American Society of Civil Engineers report card. So they do this report card all the time. Dams are at risk of failure. Trillions of gallons of drinking water are leaking from water systems. Roads, as we know here in the Bay Area, are horrible. Traffic fatalities are up. All of this because of our failing infrastructure here in the country. The Flint, Michigan water crisis started in 2000. The Flint, Michigan water crisis was made known in 2014 and is ongoing. The residents of Flint still do not have access to clean drinking and bathing water as of today in 2018. In Puerto Rico, we know that they had Hurricane Maria last year. They were devastated like many other islands were, but Puerto Rico, which is a U.S. territory, devastated. There's a report out from Harvard that the numbers of death were grossly underreported. Over 4,000 died versus the 67 or so, I think was the official number. But months later, many months later, 6 months, 8 months, now we're almost a year out. Parts of the island still do not have electricity, basic services and things like that. So that goes also to the United States failing infrastructure. Also right here in California, throughout San Joaquin Valley, there are a number of counties there that do not and have not had safe, clean drinking water for over a decade. Nitrate levels are leaching into 96% of groundwater supplies, according to a UC Davis study there in San Joaquin Valley. So toxic for residents there. I'm not sure if you knew about that. Some 100,000 residents in San Joaquin Valley can't drink water from tap as it's contaminated with high levels of arsenic, nitrate, and other toxins. As we think about all of this that I just shared with you, first of all, were you aware of our failing infrastructure just as a country? Were you aware of these water crises that are prevalent throughout the country? I just named two or three with Puerto Rico, but also even here in Oakland, we know that some of the public school drinking fountains were closed down because of high levels of lead and things like that. So were you aware that this was a national problem? Were you aware that they still didn't have clean drinking water in Flint 4 years later? And so on.
I'll jump in. I was aware of pretty much everything you mentioned except for the issues, I guess, in San Joaquin. You said San Joaquin, but
here in California.
Here in California,
Yeah.
but the drinking water, the issue for me that really hit home was the drinking fountains in the Oakland schools. I thought that was just unacceptable. But in terms of a failing infrastructure nationally, and obviously the Flint, issue, yes, I'm definitely aware of it and very concerned. And I think it is closer to home than what we think.
Yeah.
I was definitely aware of what was going on in Flint. I was not aware of Joaquin Valley.
San Joaquin.
San Joaquin.
Mhm.
I was aware of the OUSD schools and also the Fruitvale neighborhood because I actually live in the Fruitvale neighborhood, and I heard that those lead levels were on par with Flint.
I had not heard that. That's good to know. Okay.
Right.
So, I mean, in the infrastructure, yeah. I mean, we drive around our streets all the time. I mean, there are literally places that look like there were bombs dropped. I mean, if you hit some of these potholes at full speed, you will break your car.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. And so I find myself driving around literally looking at the street in front of me and not necessarily where my eyes level should be.
Right.
And so, yeah, I can say that I was aware that it was pretty bad. I didn't realize it was a D minus.
Yeah, that's pretty sad.
It is. And thinking of, water is life. Our bodies are primarily water.
Right.
We need that to live. We need water to live. So when we think the fact that, residents in Tulare County, which is in San Joaquin, haven't had clean water for over a decade. There's probably countless other cities and counties throughout this country. Certainly we know what's happening in Flint. It's not in the news cycle daily. And we know that the residents in Flint, those impacted and the health disparities and issues that they're facing, like the increases in Legionnaire's disease, the long-term cognitive disorders that they know are already coming up in children and things like that. Whose responsibility is it to fix it? And where should this be on the national priority list? Should we be focusing on this or NASA and space programs, or this and offshore drilling, or this or building a new Apple campus?
I mean, I think for me, I think it falls under, government oversight is what I think. I think that should be something that the government is high on the government's priority list. The reality is it's not. It hasn't been. What are the demographics in San Joaquin County?
They're poor. They're just poorer. So Fruitvale, Oakland is urban area. It's more city central. But when you go into some of these valleys and the areas like that, they're poor. You look at Flint, it's predominantly black.
Right.
Do you think that economics and race play a factor in why these things haven't been corrected in some of these areas?
Absolutely, I think so. I want to just dovetail on what Kevin said. I think it is the responsibility of government, but I think we are, the government is supposed to work for us. So I do think part of this paradigm has to be with our awareness and our voices being lifted up in these conversations, because, again, the history of this country has not been good in terms of how it's treated people other than the white people that come into the white European cultures that have come here and have become part of this country. And the history shows that people of color have not always been respected. And if you're a person of color and you live in a community that's disaffected and marginalized, you better be mindful of what's going on. And I think that what has happened is, to me, this malaise around blaming people of color in these communities and not uplifting them to have a voice in their own future. And I see this pattern continuing because again, like you're saying, some of this is not new information.
Right.
But it doesn't even get out there. Some people are living in these communities, don't even know what's happening to them.
Yeah.
So I think it's all of our responsibilities. But it's so layered. It's a multi-layered issue, and I think it's going to take many people to be engaged in these conversations for change.
Well, hopefully, this is a start.
Right.
We'll continue talking about it
Right.
and elevating it because, again, this is life.
Exactly.
And it's impacting, generations.
Absolutely.
Mass graves have been found in Texas recently filled with the bodies of immigrants, mostly gathered from the desert around Falfurrias. I'm pronouncing that, I'm not sure. Falfurrias, Texas. So people may cross into this country illegally, whatever. A lot of them died while waiting for help. They've called 911. They're waiting for someone to come help them, and no one comes. They pass, and they've just all been dumped into mass graves. Lawmakers said that no laws have been broken by just putting all the bodies in a mass grave. This is one thing. Also recently, approximately 250 migrant children held at a Texas detention center were given an adult dose of hepatitis A vaccine. So they're being monitored right now for side effects. Oops, right? We also know that the United States missed the court-ordered deadline to reunite hundreds of children who have been taken away from their parents. So those are just three things going on with the U.S. I'm not even going to say Mexico because all of the immigrants coming aren't from Mexico, but let's just say the immigration crisis on our southern borders right now. Are we talking about this enough? And are we talking about it in a way, how are we talking about it if we're talking about it?
Well, from the right perspective, when I say the right, the political
left-right
perspective, and I don't want to just simplify it, but sometimes it is simplified that way. This population of people, of human beings, are being dehumanized. And you're using the letter of the law, as you say. This is the law that you need to come in this country legally. But in doing that, you're dehumanizing this group of people. And there's also a concern in terms of what's really going on. Because as we're having these conversations that are sometimes about the sensationalism of the issue, real people, real children are being impacted on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's the part that concerns me around that dehumanization, is that we're missing opportunities to help these young people and their families. And even though I don't know everything that's going on, I think the promise of America is why people are coming here. They're coming here with a vision to do better for themselves and for their families. And to me, that is the promise. But now, which I think started by 45, it didn't start by him, but by him going down the escalator and calling out certain people. Now there's a whole sort of ethos around these people are other. These people have no value. They're coming here taking things away. And it's almost being normalized. I think... And
even though that's not necessarily true, but that's the rhetoric that's being pushed.
Of course. I just see all this as being a result of that, where policy is not... Practice is really creating more harm than good in terms of the numbers of people coming into this country. And the fact that folks were coming here who were seeking asylum, even those policies and practices are being done differently to stop people from coming here.
And seeking asylum.
So, it's again very layered, but I'm very concerned about how we other groups of human beings and make them the bad guy for seeking the same hopes and dreams that are for, not necessarily us, but other people had in coming to this country.
And other people do on a daily basis from other places.
But I think there's a very intentional around brown people coming from the southern border, because there is an issue from other parts of the northern border. You have generally white people of European descent.
You said they want them from Norway.
Coming in, and there's no sense of what that's a problem. And I don't think, in fact, statistically, my understanding is that less people are coming. So I think this whole issue about the horde of people coming in is
not true.
It's not true. And we know that we can't, in my opinion, you can't take anything you hear from certain people in this administration for fact, because they send out a narrative that's false, and people seem to buy it. But it says a lot about who we are as a people. That concerns me. The lack of humanity and empathy and compassion. It's something wrong, and it's happened very quickly.
Yeah, and Kevin, I want you to chime in. I want to give you one more. So we talked about the mass graves. We talked about the children being crazily inoculated, which is a whole. Giving them inoculations is why are you doing that anyway? But whatever. Okay, that. We also talked about the children that have not been reunited with their families yet. What I didn't mention, and I'm just going to give this to you, and I want you to answer the question as well. The number of children who are attempting suicide, who have committed suicide or attempting suicide, I think babies, from the anxiety of being separated from their parents and their families for days, weeks, months. And that's also...
I did not even know that. I think your original question was, one of them was, are we talking about this enough? Clearly, we're not talking about some of this enough. But I think we need to do something. I think it's been on the news a lot, and they just missed the deadline. We need to do something. I think this country has a history of separating families.
Yeah.
Has a history of testing drugs on black and brown folks. So I think there's something needs to be done. What that is, I don't know. But I think the United States, we also have a history of putting ourselves on a pedestal as far as our morals are concerned. And I think that we are lost and have been. And I think it's just becoming more and more evident with every news story around. There was something on just yesterday where the woman in the park with the Puerto Rican t-shirt on, getting harassed by a drunk, middle-aged white man with the police standing right there and ignoring it. And then there's the African-American woman who beat the 91-year-old man with a brick.
Crazy. Yeah.
I think all of that goes back to, like you said, dehumanization, which again, this country has a history of doing that.
But what's interesting, I think ditto to everything you said is, it seems for me, since I've been on a platform, I might be the oldest person in the room, but I do see, maybe because of social media, the way we can get information, it seems to be just coming to the surface more than it's ever been. And the hate and the vitriol seems to be so pronounced. I mean, when you have people calling police, even though we're talking about brown people, but calling the police on people doing mundane things that are non-threatening. Right. And this sense that that's okay. And even the news coverage, I get to a point now where it seems like it's normal. That's just another. Right. But if you look at what's happening, as you said, in terms of the traumatization and the collective malaise, this is affecting all of us in some way. And it's not okay. And I agree. What can we do? And that's the part that I struggle with, because we're not powerless. We're not. But how do we collectively respond? Right. Is the issue. So along those lines of a response, and we need to do something, there's the collective we, and there's the we, you, I, those sitting here at the table. So for the individuals that hear these things, that are living in this world, that see these things happening every day, what should we individually do just to be aware or to make a change or make a difference? What should you do? What should you do? I'll let Kevin start. I'll take that.
I don't have an answer for that. Right. I don't know. I think we are, and speaking for myself, I am so focused on, and it sounds so bad and so selfish, I'm so focused on my house and keeping those in my house safe. I'm so focused on this work that we're doing. And it's sad. I don't think I've heard it. It was one of the saddest things I've heard about a month ago when the audio was released. Oh, the children. Yeah. I haven't heard anything that sad in a really, really long time.
But was it feeling it's sad, this is horrible, but back to my life? And do you think
It's-
that, and not about you personally, but do you feel like that's what most of us are doing?
I think that's what we're doing. I think that's what I did. I think
Right.
it was sad and horrible. And yeah, back to our 5-year celebration that we had that next week or something like that. So I don't know the answer to that. I think we need to vote. That's one of the
That's
things.
one
I
of
hate
the
to sound
political-
corny and
political-
cliche.
No, it's not corny. It's
that-
straight. That's
that's
real
not.
as
But
hell.
that is so
real as
real.
hell.
Well, I think
Yeah.
we live in a different place and people
So
voted differently,
real.
obviously, in the
Yeah.
last presidential
Yeah.
election. But, can I jump in on what you said? I actually think you are doing something by focusing on yourself and focusing on your family, because our power rests within us initially as human beings, but our power also extends to the people that we love and we touch on a daily basis. So I think you focusing on your family, your children, your wife, and your extended family is powerful, because that positivity that comes from that network of family is a strength. And that to me is what we should be doing. I do think political action and social consciousness outside of our families and our work structures are important, but if we could bring that energy to your family and to our work, that adds value. Because our work, for example, touches hundreds and thousands of people.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is the first step, because it goes back to what you said, Chamia, in the beginning. You start with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think being aware, and making sure that even though you may feel powerless, but there's something you could do. And some of that sometimes is modeling for your son and your daughter. For me, it's modeling for my grandchildren. That I know that, yes, it may be difficult, but there's strength and resilience in us. And look where you are. Each day you could do something. So I do think we can do something. I just want to lift that up because, Kevin, you do. You do.
Don't be so hard on yourself, brother. You all right?
But the issue is all
But
this,
it's real.
you're bombarded with other stuff that you seem powerless.
Yeah.
In terms of that world out there, what you can do. But you're part of the world.
Yeah.
And who you touch every day, you can make a difference.
That's a
Yeah.
good point, because what that made me think of, what you're talking just now, is our job as parents is to raise compassionate
Yes,
and
brother,
empathetic
That's right.
children.
And responsible children.
That's right.
Good global citizens.
That's
Yes.
right. There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
That's part of that solution.
Who will, number one, not contribute to the dysfunction that's
Right.
going on, and
Absolutely.
and the amoral behavior that's going on, but will hopefully be inspired to contribute to the change.
Yeah.
Exactly. And to me,
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, well, that's what I get with too. But that's the piece. I know we're going to talk about Fathers Corp, but I think that's the value add of the work that inspires me every day. Is that I know that I may not be able to do all that over there that concerns me, but with my little niche of the world, I can do something positive. But it's challenging because you know what? You got to keep that positivity in lieu of all this crazy that's going on. And there's a lot of crazy going on.
As a black man,
yeah.
we should really be paying close attention to this
Yes,
whole
sir.
breaking up of family.
So hold on, we gonna get to that.
Yes, sir.
Hold on, more on that. Yeah.
Anybody should be empathetic.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it should be, yes,
And
absolutely.
we got to keep our diligence because
Yes.
it's assault, and it has been. And I don't think over the last how many hundreds of years.
Right.
It's a bigger assault, I think, than ever on us and our viability as part of being a humankind. It's
Globally,
Yeah,
we don't
it's-
talk about that. Hold that
All
thought.
right.
Hold that thought. We
All
coming back
right.
in 2 stories. 1 second. All right. Okay. Hundreds of unarmed Palestinians have been killed by Israeli border police recently, including, just lots of women and children. So this Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been going on since Jesus, probably. I don't know, a very, very long time. Recently, Warrior Star, so champion warriors Bremond Green, visited the Border Police's counterterrorism unit and took some photos posing with a sniper rifle, the same rifle that's used to kill, or I'm not saying the same exact gun, but the same type of rifle that's used to kill innocent Palestinians there at the border. So obviously the internet has been blowing up with, what the hell was he thinking? Should he have known better?
Should he have known better?
Should he have known better? Should his people have told him, you're going to this conflict there? I mean,
Number one, the question is, who are his people?
yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? Second, I mean, it's a lot to know.
Right.
But I do think, I don't know Draymond personally, obviously, but I think it was just lack of knowledge. That's why you do something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I
don't think he's making any statement other than that he should have been a little better informed.
Right, I agree. I think that sometimes we put too much on folks who are celebrities and sports figures to be morally conscious on every step they take.
Yeah.
And we're not.
Yeah. And we're not.
And we're not.
Woo!
I'm not.
Hashtag preach.
I'll be honest. I'm not.
Yeah.
Because I know I got stuff I got to work on every day.
Me
You just don't have
too.
a camera following you.
That's right. And that's the difference that we put so many people on pedestals that they should be this, they should be that.
They should be held to a higher standard that we don't
they're
even hold
human beings,
ourselves.
and this is a man still in his formative years.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, he may
he's
be a
young,
superstar, but he's in his formative years. And yes, he might to some make a mistake, and maybe he has. I don't know. In fact, this is the first time I heard about this story. But again, we cannot put standards on people if we're not going to adhere to those standards ourselves. For a lot of those naysayers and haters, they need to take a look in the mirror, like Michael said, and start with yourself.
Did not quote Michael Jackson.
He did.
Sure did.
He sure did. And on that next story, All right. London Breed has just been sworn in as the 45th mayor of San Francisco. This is a historic event. We're hearing about it here in the San Francisco Bay Area because she is the first female African American mayor of San Francisco. Where to begin? Why is it an issue that she's the first female African American? Should it just be an issue that or should we just celebrate that there's a new mayor? Or should we be touting this as a historic occasion? Is it sad a little bit that it's a historic occasion, that this is just the first time it's happening and that we have to call these things out because they're still rare in America?
That's true.
I mean, it's a first.
It's a first.
It's a first. And historically, we've been locked out of a lot of political processes. And so when you, I'd say it's pretty extraordinary given the number of black folks in San Francisco right now.
Absolutely.
For her to be able to pull that out is extraordinary, and celebratory and sad all at the same time. So yeah, I think it should be celebrated, and it is sad as well that we're still celebrating the first.
Yeah.
You know, has Oakland's never had a black
female
mayor, right?
No, not to my knowledge.
Not to my knowledge either.
Black male, yes, but not black female.
Yeah. It is definitely a milestone when you think about it. And one of the things that when I moved to the Bay, I lived in San Francisco for 13 years, and I saw the sort of diminishing number of African Americans and our impact in the San Francisco community. So for her to win and win decisively means that there was a coalition of all type of voters in her win. But again, I do agree that it's celebratory, but it's also a really, to me, a milestone on understanding just the whole thing about race and how race is so much part of who we are as Americans. And sometimes we strive to move away and look at this color-blinded perspective, and it's not.
Which is a white privilege to have,
right,
in my opinion.
So to me,
to be colorblind.
I think we need to celebrate, but also keep in mind where we are in our journey as Americans, particularly African Americans, our journey.
And I think it's another example of, we talked about it earlier about them changing the rules and when she was interim mayor. And then
which was interesting too, the fact that they called her interim mayor, but when Mark Farrell became interim mayor, acting mayor, or whatever, you didn't hear those qualifiers.
Right.
You heard mayor.
Right. Exactly.
And then her opponents teamed up to try to beat her.
Right.
So, we can't keep looking at, and I know that we don't, But I think the other side a lot of times looks at it as a coincidence. But these coincidences,
No.
I mean,
No.
come on. Man.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's keep talking about this on the issue of race. The National Urban League released its annual State of Black America report earlier this year. So they do this report every year, and they look at lots of different areas from economics, education, jobs, and so on and so forth. In the report, they say that the organization's new priority will be protecting areas of progress such as job growth, high school graduations, health, civic engagement, etc., from retrenchment during the Trump presidency. There's been a lot of things that have happened in Black America, if you will, recently, including the NFL's ban on protest on the field, so no more kneeling. Players can either stand for the anthem or stand a grievance or complaint against that. We know what happened in Philadelphia with the brothers who were gathering at Starbucks like folks do to have a meeting, and the police were called on them. We've heard about the Waffle Houses and the different incidences where Black patrons have had the police called on them. Barbecuing while Black. Thanks, Barbecue Becky, or the young girl who in San Francisco had the police called because she was selling water without a permit. We also have heard recently that Target, so Father's Day just passed not too long ago, they had these baby daddy cards with Black folks featured on them. They pulled them after some outrage. We also know that recently nooses were found at a construction site here in San Francisco, and civil rights attorney John Burris has taken up that case because Blacks have been pushed out of construction in large numbers in San Francisco and all over the place. But to be seeing that on your job site, 45 stories up in the air, there's that. Also know that recently in Pennsylvania, the police have tased this unarmed Black man who was just sitting on the curb, tased him in the back. Brother just sitting there, and that happened. Have race relations in America gotten worse, in your opinion? Or is it kind of what you alluded to earlier, Gary, which is that we're just seeing it more because of social media?
I think it starts at the top. I think when, like you mentioned earlier, when he came down that escalator and called Latinos rapists and drug dealers and murderers, he set the tone. He's had a long history of racism and racist remarks. I think he has emboldened folks who used to be in the shadows. I think
he's told people to take the cape off or take the hood
off,
off,
or wear it outside.
Yeah, right.
Leave it on and wear it in public.
Right. Make America great again.
Right.
Yeah.
I think so. I think there's that, and everybody's walking around with a high definition video camera in their pocket now. So we are. I don't know if it's happening more often, but we are definitely capturing it on tape more often. I mean, there's so many different, just in the past 2 weeks, from people calling the police on Black folks at the pool. When they're the only Black people there, asking them to show ID. I just saw the one, and the police show up and actually make her show the ID to the guy to get him to leave her alone.
Yeah.
I feel like that's contributing to...
Or the lady that called in Berkeley that called the police on the group of Black folks because they wouldn't talk to her. Because they wouldn't talk to her and include her in the conversation.
Bob Marley's niece or something in LA, they were moving out of an Airbnb.
Oh, I hadn't heard about that one.
Had the police called on her, had to sit there and wait 45 minutes while they tracked down the Airbnb owner to verify that they were actually renting the space.
Right.
So, I mean, is it happening more? I don't know. We'd have to look at statistics on that, and I don't even know if anybody has those. We're definitely seeing it a lot more thanks to technology. And I think there needs to be some sort of repercussion. I think there needs to be a fine or something. You can't just keep calling the police for nothing. Give somebody a $5,000 fine. I bet you they think twice about calling the police for nothing the next time.
I definitely think this is a symptom of bigger issues, and I do think that there's something wrong with the American psyche, I think, in general. But I think with this president and with his sort of approach of using media as a tool and Twitter as a tool to enrage, to strike fear is working. I think all the things we're seeing, I think they existed, but this heightened sense that it's okay for you to assume the worst of another human being, doing mundane things is what's, I think, shocking to so many of us. And it's happening on the regular, so how it's sensationalized, I think, also lends to even more of that behavior. So I think there's, again, a collective response, and I think media also has to play into what is your role in not reporting and say, this is not okay.
Hello, Just Chamia Show. This is not okay.
I don't hear enough of that.
Yeah.
It's like you hear about, this happened, and well, and then you see the Twitter, like 3,000 people responding on Twitter. That's not it.
And then we're on to the next incident.
Yeah,
So along those lines, because we're hearing so many of these things, are we becoming desensitized to black men and women and girls and boys, babies, being criminalized, being abused, and how has it impacted your existence and how you move and navigate as two black men, and how you engage and tell your children about existing and navigating and engaging with all of this going on?
You want to go ahead?
I would say that what's sad, and I'm going to say this, I think it's sad that I think some of this some of this has been here throughout our history as being part of this country, but it just seems to be more, it's like because of media, because of how we access information, it just seems to be thrown out there. And I do think, yes, I would say yes to your question, that just so much of it, after a while, you filter information. You can't, your brain, because you have to get on with life too. So it becomes part of that paradigm.
It's normal. We're normalizing it?
Well, I wouldn't say normal, but you become, I wouldn't say normal, desensitized to it.
Okay.
And there's been studies around violence in communities that after you have experienced so much, that it doesn't shock you. It doesn't, it's just another person who's gone. And that's my fear around all of this, around this racial, the racialization of life, I call it. That's what I use with my family. That everything is racialized to a negative. It's not a positive. And then the positive stuff becomes sort of an aberration. Like seeing a group of positive young African American men. In fact, there was a story this morning on NPR around this woman went into a situation where she saw a group of African American and Latino youth, male youth, who were young and probably were presented in a way that young people were presented in terms of clothing, and she immediately assumed there's something negative that's going to happen. Then a homeless man came in. But what happened, all these people came together in a positive way. That group of young men of color were doing a Bible study of all things.
Wow.
And someone
here she was ready for it to pop off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and this was someone who thought that she was, a liberal, someone, but she just immediately went to this sort of what's going to happen.
Clenching her purse.
Yeah, all these people of color in a space, and there's this youth energy, and then the homeless man comes in, like wow, as opposed to those people were there experiencing their life in that part of that group energy in a positive way. And that became the story, which is a good story, but that also became like, why couldn't that be the expectation?
So how has this changed or impacted your life, how you're walking around navigating and what you're teaching your grandchildren?
I think for me, I've always been aware of what could happen to me as a black man. I think part of it because I was in the military and defending our country, so to say, and had stuff happen there. And I haven't had a lot of incidents in my adult life, but because I'm from Newark, New Jersey, which is a chocolate city that has had a lot of issues and a lot of things, that I've always had this awareness about my place in the world, that even though I may be so-called middle class, and I say so-called because I don't even know what that means anymore, and I have some privilege of that. I also have privilege of being an older African American who survived, that I don't take anything for granted. So I do not take my position for granted. I don't take anything I do for granted. And I try to pass that information on to my children, my son and my grandchildren, that you cannot take anything for granted, but you give your best to every situation. But also be aware. And I think Kevin and I talked a little about, I think we have to have, because of how we've been portrayed, how we're dealt with, and how we continue to be heightened in our awareness about who we are and what we do almost in any situation we go out into the world. When we're in our own little circle with our homies and our families, we can relax. But when we walk out the door, we have to be cognizant and aware. And I think that's something I teach. I mean, I know that Kevin's probably had to talk with Kevin already. I've had to talk. In fact, I continue to have to talk with my grandson because he's a knucklehead. And he think I'm this and I'm that. I said, no, you are this and that with us. But you go out in the world, people can see you from a fear lens, and we have to accept that. Do I like it? But that's part of the American experience for African American men.
Sadly.
So.
What about you? How has all of this, if it has, impacted your life and what you're saying and teaching your children?
It's made me, it's upsetting. You know, it puts me on edge. So much so to the point where I have to take a break from it sometimes. I can't watch every video. I can't read every article that shows black folks being profiled. What it has also done is it has really made me, and I've always been aware of my privilege as a ultra light black man. You know what I mean? When I'm, you know, when I'm out driving at night, people don't know what the hell I am.
You're safe in Alameda.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it has made me ultra aware of that. It's made me reflect as an adult on the privileges that I had as a kid, from even being in classrooms and being treated differently by teachers. My behavior being looked at differently than that of my browner skinned brothers and classmates. So it's made me pay attention to that. It's definitely made me have conversations with my son, who is, 6'2", 14 years old. But if you talk to him, you might think he was 10. But when the police roll up on him, you're this big, tall, boy.
Yeah.
And we saw what happened to Tamir Rice. We saw what happened to...
we saw what happened to baby girl who was 14 in a bikini at a waterfall in Texas.
Yeah, so, he pulled her hair, knocked her on down, a little girl. A little girl.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's made me... less tolerant of bigotry. Not that I was ever tolerant of it, but it really puts me on edge, and it's upsetting. It's sad, and again, I think you said it too. This isn't nothing new. We've been getting kicked out of Starbucks for not buying nothing for a long time. It was just they just happened to catch us on tape this time. We've been getting followed around the store while we shop for a long time. This is nothing new.
So then what's the solution in terms of, again, us on the ground, lawmakers and all that stuff aside, what should black people do to help? Should we stop shopping at these places? Should we educate Barbecue Becky when she calls the police on why this is wrong and a waste of resources and all that? Should we tell Permit Patty that I am not required to have a permit to do this? Or how come you didn't call on, our Hispanic brothers down here selling fruit every day on the corner?
That's right.
What should we do?
I think it's all of that, I think it's all of that, but I also think you have to do what you're most comfortable as a person, because not all of us are going to want to, even though I'd be great if more people wrote their legislative, all that. So there's multiple approaches, but I think you have to find your path and your voice, your own personal voice. And some of us are comfortable going to the legislative route and talking to our elected local officials, that kind of thing. But I also think, Kevin said it starts with yourself and your family. I think that is so critical, because I think, and I'll always will put that out there, that is the fabric of who we are as people. We're from, the diaspora, and we are a group of people who believe in the social collective. That's been our history and that's been our culture. And I think if we start with that family, having the opportunity to help and guide and facilitate the things that we feel, the moral fiber things, those are most important. But I do think there are other folks, we're in a unique position to have the ear of a lot of different people who are decision makers and policy makers who also have resources. So I think for those who are in those positions to also have those critical conversations,
Do so.
and do so, and don't expect people to agree, but continue to have the conversation.
Right.
Because again, change doesn't happen because you do something one time. It happens because of persistence and consistency. And I do think there's multiple. I think it's just not one approach. And then, Kevin, you said earlier, vote. I mean, we have opportunity in the fall of 2018 to make a major statement about what we don't want to continue in Washington.
Yep.
And we have the opportunity, and we need to take responsibility, individual responsibility. If we can vote, to vote, and vote with your conscience, about what's right and how you feel the world should be, and think about the future.
Yeah.
Because
the future is not just 80 years from now. The future is what's
Right.
going to happen in the next few months, in
Right.
the next year, etc.
Exactly. So, yeah.
All right, so I want to talk about Fathers Corp, but before we do, I want to know, who are y'all? So for those who don't know you, who are you, Kevin? Give us a little bit about your background. Who are you? Where are you from? Who are your people?
Peeps, who's your peeps?
Kevin Bremond. I am a father of 3. Been married to my wife for a long time, 19 years. It'll be 19 years in February.
Black love. Yes.
Yeah, excuse me, it'll be 20 years in February, sorry.
Oops.
I come from a large family. I grew up in Oakland. My dad was one of 9 who grew up right there on 40th Street in North Oakland. I've been working here at First 5 for about 15 years now. I started the Fathers Corp with my brother over here, Gary Thompson, in 2013. So we just celebrated our 5-year anniversary for our program. And that's kind of who I am. I'm a dad. I'm a guy who runs a program at First 5. I'm an uncle. I'm a nephew. And I'm Oakland.
All right. And who you? Gary from Jersey.
Yeah, I'm a California transplant. I'll start with that. But, Gary Thompson. I work for the Alameda County Public Health Department. Obviously a little bit older than Kevin. I'm a grandfather of 2. My son and his family live in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm a Buckeye. I went to Ohio State, so that's how the Ohio thing happened. But originally from Newark, New Jersey. I'm very proud of that because I like the fact that I'm from the East Coast, live in the West, and made my life and professional life on the West Coast. But I like the fact I'm from Newark, New Jersey, and those are the roots. And I come from a family who's been very politically active. I'm one of 2 children. My older brother was a public defender as well as a DA, and he passed early, but he's always with me. And he's one of the people that I always think about when I do this work because of he was married 3 times, and one of his children didn't turn out so well. So I do this work from that perspective about what's needed to be successful as a parent and raise a child, for his or her future. So that's what guides me. I'm also very thrilled to be doing something like this work that really has energized me in the waning years of my professional life, that I've found something that I really feel passionate about and that I think is making a difference. It's also seeing opportunities for people like yourself to be connected to Chamia's and Kevin's, future leaders of the world. So I feel very empowered by the work that I do. And it touches my core passions as well as who I am as an African American man. So,
All right.
yeah.
Gary, tell us, what is the Alameda County Fathers Corp?
Wow, that's a great question. And it makes me think of this video we recently shot where we asked several different people.
Who shot that video?
Miss Chamia over there.
I've never met them before today.
It's multiple things, but
Yeah.
I always say it's a systems change effort, but it's a lot more than that. I think there's what the Fathers Corp is a movement, and it's a movement made up of people who are really committed to helping fathers, but most importantly families, be the best they can be. And we have systems work, we have people in the field working directly with fathers, but our work is really about uplifting fathers and how we can support them, but build systems of care, better systems of care for them, so they can be the best they can be. And it's an opportunity for people like Kevin and I to be part of something that we firmly believe in, but also see opportunities for others in this process, because it's a movement. It's more than just us. We're actually facilitating a process that's allowing, our families to thrive, but just particularly our fathers to thrive.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of moving parts to it, but I'll stop with that.
So I'm going to digress for a moment. It is a movement, and I've joined the movement.
That's right.
And, I'm not a man, but I support the movement as, a woman who didn't grow up with my father in the home, who now as an adult have a bestie relationship with my dad, who's raising a young black boy without a father in the home. But I see the importance of this work, the importance of the community that you all have built, and I'm here for it. So yes, it is a movement, and I'm on that train.
All right,
Kevin,
all right, Chamia, thank you.
Kevin, you've mentioned you guys are now in your 5th year. Why is it important, or is it important to have father-centric services? And don't we already have father-centric services?
There are some, but not a lot. There's not a lot out there. Like I said, I've worked here at First Five for about 15 years. And this is our first father-specific program component that we've had in the 20-year existence of First Five Alameda County. So as a dad, especially, and I just reflect on, by the way, today's my 22-year-old daughter's birthday. So
Happy birthday.
All right, happy
today,
birthday.
She's 22. But I reflect on me being a young parent. I was 19 when my daughter was born. And if I walked into a parent group, if I even decided to go to a parent group at 19 years old, and it was all moms, I probably wouldn't have gone back. I wouldn't have thought that program was for me. If you're promoting an event and your flyer has a picture, it's a family event, and your flyer has an image or a silhouette of a mom and a child, again, that doesn't speak that it is for me. If I show up to an event and all the facilitators are female providers, that doesn't necessarily speak to me as a dad. So it's important because dads, it's important to have father-centered and father-centric services, because dads' needs are unique. Mom's needs are unique. We need programs built.
And they're equally important.
And they are equally important.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. We don't want to take anything away from mom. Mom needs more.
Right.
We just want to expand that focus to make sure we are capturing the entire family and supporting the entire family. So historically, the early childhood field in general has always been focused on mom and child. So now the times are changing. Hopefully that's what we're trying to do, is change the way that services are built, change the way that funding decisions are made, change the way that programs are promoted, to make sure that agencies, leadership are intentional with their engagement of fathers, and recognizing that fathers' needs are unique and going out of their way to meet those unique needs. So it's critical, because it hasn't happened, which is why our work has grown so quickly, which is why it's called a movement. It's because there was a gap in services that were there, and we filled it, and we shined a light on something that folks just weren't paying attention to. I mean, it's very rare that Gary and I go out when we talk to people, talk to agencies, talk to staff, where they are, making calculated decisions to not include dad. For the most part, they just haven't thought about it. And so our job is to make them think about it.
And as you guys are both talking about services and programs and agencies, what are these services and programs and agencies that you're talking about that are your customers and collaborators? Who are they?
The Fathers Corp is a collaboration between First 5 Alameda County, the Alameda County Public Health Department and Healthcare Services Agency, and the Alameda County Social Services Agency. So those are our systems funding partners. We also work very closely with probation, Alameda County Probation, and we work very closely with Alameda County Child Support. So those are our systems partners. And then we work with a variety of community-based organizations, from Village Connect to A Better Way, 4Cs, Bananas. We work with Oakland Head Start, Alameda County Office of Education.
Well, I think when that question, anyone who touches family and children could benefit. It could be part of this sort of conversation and movement, because again, I always think about how services have been traditionally set up to support mother and child, which is fine, and it should continue. But think about, I always break it down, think about Claudine, the movie Claudine, back in the day with James Earl Jones and Diane Carroll, where to get services, to get resources, a man wasn't supposed to be in the room. In the house. And what's fascinating, services were really structured around providing services to mom and child. And it's even in the birthing process, it's just throughout our society that we've become this, the father is over there doing this, or the father's absent. And we also know now that when there are two viable, functioning, aware parents, that they could successfully raise a child together. And again, one thing we haven't mentioned, Kevin and I always mention, we are only always talking about just the biological father, because there's a lot of caring male figures out there who could benefit from this work. And we always have made our table inclusive to engage them and others who really step up to the role of parenting and supporting a young person in their development. So to me, it's really kind of balancing out the family service and support system, so we touch on everyone who's involved in that child's life. Because again, the systems have been so long, historically been focused on mom, and rightly so. But with our changing the number of single fathers raising children, the number of blended families, the number of divorced families, gay fathers. I mean, we have to look at who is raising our children and support them and empower them to be the best parents they could be, whoever they may be. And I think that's what's part of why I think people have responded to our work, because they can see a role they play if they touch a child, touch a family's life. Because we had mentioned the school systems. We have gotten so much interest from local schools as well as systems that work with schools, because they see the value of touching and engaging both parents and the importance of that for a child's development, academic development. So
the programs and the systems and the agencies that you've mentioned are kind of mirrored throughout the country. We talked about Alameda County, but they're in all counties and exist. Child support, probation, whatever they are, they exist. And they are predominantly mother-child centric. Now, while you are here in Alameda County, what has been the response and support of this work beyond Alameda County, either locally, statewide, etc.? I know one of, I don't know to call him a mentor for lack of a better term, that spoke at your celebration. So he's out of state, but clearly there's some collaboration in other areas. What does that look like for you and the reception been for this work that you're doing beyond Alameda County?
What we found is a pretty unique model. We are focused less on the direct service and providing services to dads, and more on building the capacity of the programs and systems that are already exist, that are already in communities, building their capacity to engage and support dads more effectively.
Not recreating the wall, but mastering.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I like that.
As far as attention that we've gotten from programs or entities outside of Alameda County, we were just down in LA for the First 5 California Summit. We actually sponsored a fatherhood track there, so there was a series of 4 workshops that we sponsored. Gary and I presented at 2 of them. We brought out some of our other presenters that we've used here in Alameda County to do the other 2. There's a national entity, 0 to 3, that we presented at last year, and we're actually working with them to put together a father focused component to their summit coming up in October, and that's going to be in Denver, Colorado. We've presented down in LA for other state conferences. Gary?
Yeah, we've actually, one of the things we did in California was also present at the California WIC Association conference last year or 2 years ago.
You don't know WIC,
Women,
Infants, and Children.
Which led to
Not the most inclusive name.
Yeah.
which has led to some really great efforts locally with our Alameda County WIC, which we've been doing some wonderful things. But what's interesting, I think, we are unique in terms of what the Fathers Corp does, but there are a lot of other programs and activities across the country that are doing some really innovative things with fathers and systems. I recently presented about the Fathers Corp model and our father-friendly principles at a national Healthy Start. The Healthy Start is a federally funded program that addresses infant mortality. And there's a big interest in that. How do we lift up fathers and systems around how do you engage fathers in these conversations around infant mortality? Because that's something, again, the systems have always focused on, okay, mother, you know, what can the mother do to make sure she has a safe pregnancy and this child gets through their first year of life healthy? Well, now, because of some of the work, in fact, really because of these 7 father-friendly principles, which I presented on actually, that, okay, what can we do to take some of these core principles and use them to create ways to engage systems around infant mortality? And this is a conversation now that's going on nationally. I mean, and these people are having, Kevin and I are not in the room, so our 7 father-friendly principles have really created a platform for people to talk about this.
Wonderful.
Which is something I think that has had great impact. In fact, when we presented at the conference in LA in April, we learned that the city of Long Beach had taken our principles, I don't know what the final iteration, but taking the principles and formally the city adopted them. And
But that's great.
It is great.
Wonderful, yeah.
So, but that's the impact of this work, which we didn't even know about, which was really a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
A very pleasant surprise. So.
Love that.
Yeah, it was cool.
What's next? What's coming up for the Fathers Corp? What do you guys have going on?
Wow, we got some big things going on.
Our biggest event that we have coming up is March 16th, 2019. It's the first Alameda County Fatherhood Summit. We are hoping to attract 1,000 dads. It will be held at Merritt College. We just secured Mark Lamont Hill to be our keynote speaker.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Very
we got
excited about
Kaiser signed on as our title sponsor for the event. We've also secured some funding from Alameda Alliance, and so we're really in the fundraising stage of that. But can you imagine 1,000 dads coming together and celebrating the role of being a dad, highlighting the critical role and that dads play in our communities, in our families, in our schools. So that's our next big event. That's going to really, I think, put us over the top as far as just attention to the work.
The other thing I want to lift up in that is that we are also embarking on a major effort to support the development of new programs and services for fathers in Alameda County through the Fatherhood Partnership work, which is done in collaboration with systems.
Awesome.
And that whole process will start in the fall with, it's almost like a 6-month process, and it will coincide, and hopefully we'll build a capacity of several different organizations provide services, and the summit will also showcase those programs so that when those 1,000 fathers come, they'll also have places throughout Alameda County. If they seek certain type of services, those services will be existing. So
wonderful.
We're not only just building and bringing awareness, hopefully changing the paradigm, but also creating more services and supports in our county. And that to me is really what it's about, because I think we've done a really monumental job, but our journey is evolving. But the reality is we need to create more programs and services throughout this county and support fathers and all types of fathers as well.
And Gary's pointing out the creation of father-specific programming. the reason we know that's important, other than the fact that we've done this work for the last 5 years and there's just not much out there, but we conducted focus groups with dads who are not engaged in the lives of their children. We did that because we felt like that group of dads gets talked about a lot and not necessarily spoken with and learned from. Those dads have a story too. And we wanted to give them the opportunity to share that story. And so what we learned was, again, from the dads themselves, was not much support out there. They feel like all of the services and support go towards mom, and they're trying to figure out this family court thing, the custody issues, the child support issues, all on their own. And it can be an exhausting process. And a lot of times what happens when that relationship breaks up, when the mom and child, mom and dad kind of just separate. In a lot of cases what happens is that the relationship fractures significantly, and when that happens, a lot of times dad disengages from the family. So what we're trying to do with these groups is provide places of support where dads can go and talk to other dads about the joys and challenges of being a father, to helpfully support him in his journey to staying connected. Because 100% of the dads who we interviewed and were part of the focus groups wanted to be a part of their kids' lives. Not one of them said, "Oh no, man, I'm good."
Can dads who maybe need some services and things like that, can fathers call you and then you'll help connect them with the service providers or agencies?
We do that. We actually, Kevin and I were meeting earlier today, and we shared with one of the administrators here about people. We average about 1 or 2 calls. So yes to that. But we also do, because of the Fathers Corp has been around for 5 years, we have created a network of direct service providers who've been part of our evolution through the learning community. So there are a lot of organizations, even mine, I also manage a direct services initiative called Father Initiative. So yes, we can refer them, we can actually provide case management, parenting, education, etc., as well as help folks navigate the systems, be it child support or custody. So yes, that exists. The one thing I will also want to say about this work is that I appreciate the fact we lifted up those voices early on, and those voices have been the guide for a lot of our work, because from listening, we created recommendations. Those recommendations for change have also been part of our whole connection to systems. So those voices, when we did those focus groups, we actually highlighted those voices, and those voices has been the foundation for our work. And I think that adds value. And I want to tell all the people who ever see this that listen to the authentic voice of people.
Because
this is focused on people. This is, yes, we're systems and we work for systems.
But it's for people.
Yes, the voices of the people lifted up our work, and we are listening and continue to listen to them. And they're guiding us.
Know what they need.
Right, and they're guiding our work. It's not just these 2 guys sitting in the back room thinking, oh, we think this would work. No, we made sure those brothers and those Latino brothers, their voices were heard, and our recommendations are based on their information they shared with us.
And the information is wonderful. They have a wonderful report called The Voices of Our Fathers, and I love that. I've given out many, but check it out. You can find it on their website as well. But to that end, if people want more information around the Fathers Corp or to connect and engage with you, how can they do so?
I'll let Kevin answer that.
You can go to our website, which is, can you have me that report? It's www.first5alamedacounty.org/Alameda-County-Fathers Corp.
We'll put it on the screen so you'll see.
We're not that advanced, and we have a nice short website name. We're working on that. We're still in our...
You can help us with that, Chamia.
Absolutely. This has been awesome. We want to continue to hear more from the Alameda County Fathers Corp and champion this movement and support this movement. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Gary. We'll see y'all next time.
Thank you.